Today, I want to talk about a piece of equipment that I believe has a rightful place in every hi-fi system owned by people who really want to enjoy their music and broaden the genres of music they listen to. Now, this piece of equipment, if I had been shown it even 2 years ago, I would have probably dismissed it as a gimmick. Not a piece of junk, but a gimmick, something definitely not for me. For those of you who know, obviously, I'm a purist. I have a single driver loudspeaker with no crossovers, no filters. I like Class A tube amps. But when I was being honest to myself, when I looked at this piece of equipment, when I first heard it, I was pretty well blown away by it. But I took the liberty to meet the person who designed it, behind it, Peter Lyngdorf. And the piece of equipment is, of course, the Lyngdorf TDAI 1120. Now, I know there's lots of videos on the internet and reviews about this piece of equipment, but I want to approach it from a completely different angle. I'm passionate about my music, and I like to enjoy my entire music collection. But over the years, I've found that as my systems got purer and purer and more refined, there are certain recordings that just don't sound good anymore. And this is where the Lyngdorf 1120, I believe, has a role to play. And more, a lot more. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning and let me give you a scenario. Now, there's two groups of people who may be interested. The first group might be people who are looking to buy their first serious system. And this video, I hope, will help. The other group are people like me who over the years have refined their systems so much that they've got their tube amplifiers in the winter and maybe a very nice Class A solid state in the summer, maybe a Pass Labs, and maybe they've got really expensive Del Augustinos or whatever, but they've got their system to exactly where they want it to be. They're delighted with it. They've convinced themselves, and probably their partners, that the system they have now is it, that's final. There's nothing more to change, there's no new cables to come, there's nothing more. It's perfect. However, when you've got into that situation, and you're probably a year into that situation, it's very likely that you're going to pick up a recording from your past. And this happened to me not that long ago. I picked up the Nightfly, the album, and I was listening to it and remembering the days when it first came out and how amazing it sounded. And in those days I was using very British kinds of loudspeakers, the sort of Kef Harbath constructions, which are very, very forgiving, and it sounded great. But playing it through my sophisticated system with my Sibelius speakers and the amps and all the rest of it, there was something slightly lacking in it. The bass wasn't as pronounced as I thought. It wasn't quite so warm in the upper bass, lower mids. And I found it frustrating, so after a while, I kind of turned it off. And when I play it in the car, it's fine. And this is the problem. I think we have a lot of recordings like this. Early Led Zeppelin albums, for example, where the bass is so far back in the mix, it can sound very loud and aggressive played through a really good, detailed system that you tend not to play them. And this little TDAI 1120 is brilliant. Now, to call this an amplifier would be like calling a Mozart opera a bunch of songs. Basically, it's the kind of Swiss Army knife of hi-fi systems. And I'll go through all the technical stuff later on. But basically, at the moment, I'm configured this little box to run between, as my source, my streamer, and I'm using my monoblock power amplifiers, my tube amps. Why? It's winter time. I like to come into the room. I like it nice and cozy. I like the sound of those monoblocks. They're very warm, they're very forgiving, they're very nice. But why would I do that? Why would I plug this in front of those to connect to my loudspeakers? Quite simple. If I'm tired, and on a Friday night I'm sitting back and I'm listening to even some jazz, but it's brilliantly recorded and the drums are and they're really in your face. It's quite energetic, especially if you've got something like the really high quality D-class amplifiers or a really good AB amplifier with a lot of punch, a lot of drive. You know, you think, maybe not. If I'm playing him on the kitchen radio downstairs, that's fine, because there's no dynamics in that radio and it's just background music and you're not paying much attention. But in my listening room, it can be fatiguing, even with the best equipment in the world. So what I do is, I go to my little tablet, I click on the Lyngdorf, and I click relax. And Lyngdorf, Peter Lyngdorf and his R&D team have designed a whole load of filters, basically, voices they call them. And they're very subtle. And when you put it on relax, it just takes some of the dynamics out and it just smooths it all down, a bit like those Mullard monoblocks that Paul Messenger had in his living room, I remember, sort of like 2.5 watts per block, smooth, laid back, beautiful. Just one hit of a button, relax. Then after a few minutes, I'm thinking, you know what, no, I do want to hear the snare drum, I do want to hear the attack, I do want to hear that precision bass. So then I just go back to neutral again. And if it's a recording and the bass is slightly light, I press bass 1 or bass 2. And then these filters cut in, all in the digital section of this little device. So, and they just are brilliantly done. I mean, I know how difficult it is to it's not a question of just dropping a frequency here or there. You've really got to work on it, and there's a lot of expertise into making them. And you can make your own with this. This is the great thing. You can log on and you can create your own voices. Friday night relax voice, and you can rename them, change them, whatever you like. No, but I digress. And I probably 2 years ago would have seen this as a gimmick and I wouldn't have given it house room. But after speaking with Peter, it was really clear what he was trying to do. And he kind of showed me in a very polite way, he's a charming man, that I was being a little bit hypocritical. He said, well, Harley, how do you approach your recording process? And I said, well, it's very simple. Find a great studio with a lovely acoustic, get the musicians, get the instruments in there, set up the microphones, just balance everything up so I'm getting plenty of information from each microphone, make sure they're in the right place and I'm choosing the right one for the right instrument. Then it goes straight into my box and then it's immediately converted into a digital signal in the box, in the Roland box. And then I take the whole thing back for post-production. And there, my colleague, Pierre Nicholas from Sonata, or whoever I'm using at the time, he will just balance them all up, align all the microphones for timing, adjust the volumes for each instrument, and say, well, how's that? And I say, you know what, Pierre Nicholas, that cello, that's an Italian cello, it's an 18th century cello, it's sounding a little bit harsh. Can you just warm it up a little bit? And can you bring it a bit further forward? It sounds like he's a little bit in the piano. Can we just bring him forward? And he fiddles around and he twiddles a little bit in the digital domain. And the next thing you know, it's perfect. And then that's it. Basically, there's almost no mastering to be done because we don't like compression. So we put this together, we lock it down, do whatever editing, taking out the odd mistake from the musicians or whatever, as little as possible, master it up, and off it goes for CD duplication or uploading onto the streaming channels. So I was thinking, well, we are tuning in the digital domain in my recordings. So why wouldn't I tune in the digital domain in my living room if the recording was originally mixed on speakers or a system so far removed from what I'm listening to that it doesn't make any sense, and try and get it to sound nice in my room? And that's exactly what this little device does. Now I'll let you into a secret. The streaming device and the DAC in here basically is the same on all their models, this front end. So when you get this front end, you've got a very, very high quality DAC streaming device with this amazing software that I know Peter and the team spent years and years developing and getting all the voices, and you can add your own voices, and every connection on the back, you can program it how you like. So I'm programming it to go into the blocks, and I could, if I wanted, to put in a high pass filter, a low pass filter, whatever. So I've got the ability to keep the characteristics, the color, the warmth, the signature, let's call it the acoustic signature of my system, and the synergy within it. I can keep all of that, but I can just tweak it finely. I remember in the old days, I had a big Kenwood amplifier, and it had a treble, mid and bass, and you could switch them off. And when you turned the treble up or down, basically you were shifting a whole range in the frequency range. It wasn't subtle at all. In fact, it was a bit like getting a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. It was a bit ridiculous. Whereas here, it's the subtlest tweaks that bring that bass forward or drop it back. And there's another really cool thing. In the evenings, especially in the winter, I like to watch a movie on Netflix. Now here, in this room, we've just got a 2-channel system. But because this has got such a great software interface, my friend Maxim comes over and he's programmed for me in Control 4, which is a system where you have basically one remote control. And it does everything. So I press watch Netflix. It switches the TV screen on, switches the power amps on, switches the Lyngdorf on, switches everything on. And it sets the Lyngdorf on D3 or whichever input it needs for the television screen and the box. And then it will say action movie, voice action movie, and it will open with voice action movie. And if I click listen to CD, it will switch it all back to all the settings I need, and it will say neutral. But I haven't even talked about yet probably the most important element of this little device from the angle of most reviewers. Now for me, it's not the most important. What I've just discussed about is the most important, is the fact that I can listen to a lot more records than I'm used to listening to and enjoy them. That's what it is for me. But what it has is a software called RoomPerfect. You've probably heard all about it, and how with the device you get a microphone and a microphone stand, and you can set the microphone up in different parts of the room. And I did it about 4 to 5 times, and the 5th time I got it bang on. I moved the microphone I think 9 times and I got 100% score, which means that the software in here has analyzed my room. Now you can hear it in the video. There's a certain echo or ring around about 1200 hertz, and it's a little bit annoying. But there's also a sharp dip at 200 hertz. It's fine at 225, 250, and it's fine at 190. But there's that little dip, and it's annoying because I only know really because I've tested it with sophisticated equipment. But once I set up the RoomPerfect and I put the microphone in the focus position where I normally sit, cleared. Completely equalized, completely even. It was a bit weird at first because it sounded different. It sounded the same but fuller and actually how it should. And I have some room treatment, as you probably know, in the room, but not a lot anymore. It's now become more of our living room rather than a working studio. And so basically this RoomPerfect has just improved the sound by another 20–30% probably, in a way, if you wanted accuracy. Now I do admit sometimes if I'm listening to ensemble music or early music, sometimes I just turn the RoomPerfect off and just have it neutral, and they call that bypass, and it works beautifully, and I can just flick it back whenever I want. But I'm not thinking about it anymore. I just know I've got these little voices that I quite like, and I tend to use soft. Soft is very much like going from ultra linear to triode on a tube amp, if you know what that difference is. It's subtle, but on the Lyngdorf 1120, it's a little bit more than subtle. It's just soft. It just softens everything up. It rounds it all off. And that's very nice if you've got a very toppy recording, just soften it down a little bit. And that's the one I mostly use, to be honest with you. And sometimes relax, as I say. But those little abilities to do that and to tweak are fantastic. Now, so for me, it's not a question of, you know, why you must have one. It's why wouldn't you have one? Because it's not that expensive. Now, that's a very good reason. It costs 2,000 euros, which is not nothing. But in hi-fi equipment terms, that's not an extraordinary large amount, because if you're starting out, you've got a streamer, you've got a DAC, you've got the preamp, and you've got the amplifier. And it's completely programmable. And in fact, I want to talk to you just a little bit about it. So you've got everything in one box for 2,000 euros, plus the test microphone, plus the microphone stand to do it all. And I've used the microphone stand. Look, it's not the same as a high quality German microphone stand, which I would be using 4 days a week or whatever. Of course it's not, but it's perfectly good for the job that it's intended. And I've written a set of notes for Sibelius owners. So if you are going to go down this route or you're going to explore it, please reach out to us and we will send you a set of notes for setting it up, because there's some very specific things that we think you should take into account for the Sibelius. I mean, one of the great little things is, it's just a silly thing. You can stream obviously to it straight from your mobile phone, or you can control it from your mobile phone, and you can set it saying, ignore the volume on the mobile phone. So if somebody comes into the room and they switch it on and it happens to be left on full volume, well, no, the mobile phone will be overruled and it will only play out at a sensible volume. You can protect your loudspeakers, you can protect your equipment, you can protect your ears. So just to come back to this simplicity thing, if I just have this box, and now the quad is demoted to just being the CD drive, and it's now via the coax going straight into here. But imagine we're streaming, just to keep it simple. There is a phono input, but imagine we're just streaming. Well, basically, what's happening in that box is so simple from an architecture point of view. The signal comes in, the digital signal, and it's going straight into the DAC. But actually, there is no amplifier. All you do when you change the volume and you increase that dial is increase the amount of gain that the DAC gets. Actually, the DAC, the digital to audio converter, which that's what it stands for, is actually the amplifier. Now, I don't quite know how Peter Lyngdorf and the team have done this, but it's a very clever piece of technology. It is the amplifier, so that's the only thing there is. And so there's outputs from it which take you to the line out, so you can link it to power amps or subwoofers or whatever. And then there's another outputs to it that take you to the terminals for the loudspeakers. That's it. There's just a DAC in there. And a power supply, of course. And that's it. Now that is simplicity. When I'm running it, it doesn't seem to get hot. So it's very compact. So I don't think there's anything I can find that I don't like about it. I do say that if you want to run subwoofers and you want to run different screens and this and that, and you want to have USB-B inputs and those kind of things, you might need to go to its big brother, which is quite a bit more expensive. I think it's called the 3400, but you'll find it on the internet, and I'll put it in the notes anyway. You might want to go for the bigger one, but for me and for everything and sound-wise, this is fine. It's perfect. So I would like to say thank you very much to Peter Lyngdorf and your amazing R&D team, and all the work that you're doing in the industry is very much appreciated by me, and I'm sure thousands of people worldwide. And your association with Steinway is very, very exciting. So I'm looking out for what else is going to happen in your world and in your organization, your partnerships with Purify and Bruno, all very, very interesting things. But for me, for my home, I'm not going to change these things now. I've got this little box, I've got my monoblocks, I've got my Colin 1.4 amplifier, which I put on in the summer sometimes. It's an amazing thing. Sadly not in production, but maybe one day. And, you know, and of course we've got the amplifier, the Lyngdorf, just taking it from the outputs. It's perfectly fine. It's great. You know, maybe you might say it's not warm, it's not this and that. It's correct. It's accurate. It's exactly what an amplifier should be. And we have the voices to change it. So I hope you found this interesting. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy your music. And the next video we'll be back talking about music and great recordings. And why shouldn't we? That's what it's all about. Enjoy.